I must admit, I have not been very diligent in catching up with Facebook and websites and blogs. I took a peep last December, and actually that was enough, because there is a tremendous amount of speculation and ideas and kind of taking of positions in regard to all of this. And all coming from a very, and I'm quite sure, my sense is it's coming from a very sincere interest, and a kind of wanting to figure it all out, to make sense of it all. Find out, who's right and who's wrong, and what's really going on here, and what can we do about it. They're very reasonable concerns. There was a little exchange earlier on in the evening about where somebody lived, and somebody said, oh, they live here and they live there, and I was remembering something that I heard about a very, very old monk in Thailand. I can't actually even remember his name, but it's a story that Ajahn Sujito told me one time, and then Ajahn Amaro mentioned a similar encounter. I'm imagining it was the same teacher. And when Ajahn Sujito went to pay respects to him, he was very, very old and very, very frail. And I think he was actually just lying on a kind of bed. And Ajahn Sujito went to pay respects, and this monk sort of beckoned him to come close. And what he said to Ajahn Sujito was, "You ni, which in Thai means stay here, live here. And I think this is a very good teaching for all of us, the idea of making one's place of refuge here, in the heart. It also reminds me of the beautiful image that you have in the next door room, the Prajna statue. And for those of you who maybe don't know, Prajna, or the paramita, the Prajna paramita is like it's often spoken about as the perfection of wisdom. I like the word discernment even better than the word wisdom. Wisdom sounds a bit grand and highfalutin. The idea of discernment, to me, points much more to this heart quality of really taking note of what's going on here, how things register here, rather than here. I mean, sometimes people confuse wisdom with what happens up here. But for me, wisdom or discernment is a quality of the heart. There can be some very bright people, very intelligent people who have got very, very good brains, but actually not very much wisdom or discernment. In fact, some of the most foolish people are the most intelligent. And some of the wisest that I've met are people who maybe not very intelligent. Maybe they don't have a PhD or even a degree or even high school certificates. But people who have a capacity to respond to life in a very direct, very immediate way, who are able to read the language of the heart. And for me, this is a language that I trust. I trust it much more than the language of the head. The language of the head can be useful. It certainly has its place. It's very... I really enjoy actually listening to people who are very bright, very intelligent. I love listening to scholars, people who can analyse things and who can talk about things, who know a lot of things. But the place that I really trust is the place of the heart. The place of the heart that maybe actually doesn't know the right answer to things. And I was contemplating this afternoon in relation to our own community, our own situation right now, and various issues that are arising. And noticing how, for myself, it can be very easy to jump to a conclusion about what's right or what's wrong, and what's going on, kind of intellectual analysis. And, in some ways, that's what we want to do. We want to understand. We want to know what the right thing to do is. But I was out walking in the yard, just doing some walking meditation, which is one of my kind of recreational activities. And it's also where I go if I'm confused, just to go and walk up and down on a path. And just to really enjoy, and this might sound strange to some of you, but actually just to enjoy the pleasure of actually not having a clue, not having the answer. And actually finding a place of peaceful abiding with not knowing up here, not having an intellectual, not being able to analyse or to figure it out up here, but just a sense of knowing, and this might sound a bit arrogant, but kind of knowing in the way that the Buddha maybe knew. I think he probably knew up here as well, but my sense is that when we take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in this quality of the heart. We trust that. It's interesting that in our tradition, we have a training, an encouragement, like when we're going to give a teaching, not to think about it, not to plan it, but rather to trust the quality of presence, the quality of awareness in the present moment. because the heart can read things in a much more broad and subtle way than the head. Like the Lumpur Ajahn Sumedho talks about intuitive understanding, that capacity of the heart to register things at a level that is beyond the intellect. It means that we have to sometimes be a bit daring, a bit courageous, and to be willing to give up on our views and opinions about things, because views and opinions come from this, whereas this quality of the heart responds to things at a much at a different level, on a level of intuition. Reading the heart, going for refuge to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, the truth of this moment, the Sangha, that quality of real interest and aspiration to live in accordance with this truth. The faith that actually is able to dare to let go of the thinking, the analytical mind, to keep it in its place. So I'm sure that the Buddha and the other wise teachers would never have said, don't think about things, don't try to understand things at that level, don't plan, don't organise your lives. So the brain is there for us to use. It's a very wonderful faculty that we have, the thinking faculty. But I always encourage people to see it as a very wonderful tool or a very wonderful servant, rather than the master. To allow our lives to be led by the heart. This, of course, can be very frustrating to people. There's a wonderful story that Ajahn Amaro told recently at Amaravati, talking about when Ajahn Chah came to England many, many years ago. And he was visiting the monks. They were living in a house in a very busy part of London, a little bit like this house, the same sort of layout. It was a kind of high house. I think it had five floors, all very, very narrow, with a very narrow staircase going between them. And it was actually opposite a pub. Do you call them pubs or bars? Mm-hmm. And so they would sit in meditation in the shrine room, which was sort of similar layout to this, similar shape, sort of two rooms kind of knocked into one. And there'd be this really loud pop music coming from the bar. And so they had even more difficult conditions to contend with than you have here, although I did notice a bit of disturbance during the sit. That kid crying, it's very much like our minds, isn't it? Anyway, Ajahn Chah was staying with the monks in the Vihara, and at one time it was the president of the Buddhist Society, the London Buddhist Society, which is a very, very old institution. I think it was founded in the 20s, the 1920s, with the aim of creating a place where people could study Buddhism. Anyway, he wanted to invite Ajahn Chah to come for a special festival and to give a talk. And he came and he asked Ajahn Chah if he'd be able to come, and Ajahn Chah said, I don't know. And he kept repeating this invitation, and Ajahn Chah said, I don't know. And he would smile in a very kind of absolutely charming way. One of the things about Ajahn Chah was that he had enormous charm, and he also didn't mind frustrating people. So the president would sort of come along and say, Venerable Sir, will you be able to come and speak at our gathering? And Ajahn Chah just smiled, not sure, don't know. And they were quite frustrated because they wanted to kind of put it on the programme and have a plan. And Ajahn Chah just sort of he refused to respond, which of course was very, very difficult for this person because he was a polite Englishman, and polite English people don't want to kind of appear to be frustrated or upset in public, and certainly wouldn't want to lose their temper. But he was, Ajahn Chah was kind of pushing him to the limit. And so there was a kind of question, well, shall we send a car or not? Shall we plan for him coming or not? And in the end, they decided to send the car, and they finally said to Ajahn Chah, are you going to go? And Ajahn Chah said, okay. And he went and he gave the talk. So he was somebody who very much lived in the moment. Rather than making a lot of plans into the future. In that situation, my sense is that he was trying to also convey a teaching, just to enable this person to see the extent to which he was, perhaps shall we say, addicted to having a clear plan. As I said before, it's not that there's anything wrong with having plans, having views about things, but the encouragement is to hold them lightly, so that we're able to adapt when things change, when things don't work out the way that we think they're going to, the way that we would like them to.